In the sweltering heat of Biel 2009, two minds ignite a battlefield on 6-4 squares. One, Alexander Morozevich, the rogue artist of chess. The other, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, the rising French phenom with calculation wired into his DNA. What unfolded was not just a game, it was cinematic warfare, an opera of chaos and clarity, fire and frost. White, the artist. Morozevich begins with a brushstroke of intention. The king's pawn rises like a curtain. Black, MVL, the calculating mind, answers with the Sicilian. This is no peaceful play. This is the path of imbalance. White calls forth the knight on f3, the early scout. Black answers not by blocking, but by anchoring with d4 move. The battle is not for the center, but for its soul. Morozevich thrusts the pawn into the core by playing d4, and MVL captures with precision by playing cx d4. The center explodes. The war begins. The white knight captures pawn with nx d4. Black's knight moves to f6, a balance of grace and grit. Two warriors face each other across the no man's land. White reinforces by bringing other knight on c3, but black plays a6, subtle and sinister. A mere pawn, yes, but also a whisper of future quenside mayhem. Morozevich builds a fortress, moving f3, a sign of the Yugoslav attacks. DNA. MVL replies with a calm pawn to e6, sealing the center and watching patiently, like a sniper. White develops with purpose. The bishop moves on e3, eyes the queen side. Black, like a general, pushes b5, not just an expansion, but a territorial claim. White's queen joins the fray, moves to d2. The message is loud, I'm castling long. Black's knight arrives on d7, coiled, tense, and ready. Morozevich lights the match. g4, a declaration of fire on the king's side. MVL responds with h6, not retreating, but fortifying, watching, and waiting. And then, it happens. White's king castles to the queen's side. The troops are left to rage on the king's side. MVL doesn't hesitate. b4 crashes onto the board like a cannon. A pawn is no longer a pawn, it's a prophecy. The knight retreats to ce2, not in fear, but in preparation, like a boxer lowering his guard to bait a strike. MVL responds with qc7, a silent aim. The queen is watching, waiting, a sniper adjusting her scope. Now Morozevich bares his fangs. h4 is not a move, it's a scream. But MVL says enough and breaks the center with d5, a punch to the gut. He's not just reacting anymore. He's fighting back. The white knight swings to f4. Aggressive, menacing, pressing his blade to black's neck. MVL, he slams e5 onto the board, calling the bluff. No movement, he's opening Pandora's box and dares Morozevich to peek inside. White sacrifices a knight. Nf e6, a thunderbolt across the board, and MVL cold, mechanic e takes it, effects e6. A pawn devours the knight with steel resolve. But Morozevich isn't done. He takes back with nx e6. Relentless, fearless, MVL counters with qa5. No hesitation. His queen glides to the corner like a raven circling death. White responds with exd5. The center ruptures again, and MVL launches his queen deep, qxa2. She's no longer a piece. She's a ghost haunting White's home. White's queen rushes to the rescue on d3, but MVL calmly moves his king. kf7. This isn't a retreat. It's him stepping into the storm, daring lightning to strike. White charges ahead, g5. The storm hits, but MVL snaps back with nxd5. No fear. He seizes the center as if to saying, you may throw fire, but I own the ground. Morozevich calls the bishop into battle. bh3, aimed like an arrow at black's soul, but MVL's reply, nxe3, is brutal. He sacrifices material comfort for complete domination. Then fireworks, nd8 check, a knight forks time and fate, but MVL dodges ke7, not scared, just focused. One eye on survival, one on checkmate. The knight twirls again, nc6 check, like a dancer in a firestorm. MVL steps aside once more, kf7. His king navigating the battlefield like a general under siege. Morozevich throws the punch, g6 check, thunder in pawn form. MVL sidesteps kg8, a cold minimal move. Still standing, still calculating. White's queen devours the center, qx3. The tension explodes. MVL responds instantly with bc5. This isn't development. This is declaration. You can't run anymore. Morozevich shifts the queen, qe4, but the dream of a mating net fades. MVL plays f8, a silent sentinel. His pieces don't scream, they whisper death. White's rook storms on rd8, a final hope, a desperate signal flare. MVL ice cold, he plays bb7. The bishop joins the party, and suddenly the noose is visible. The center is scorched, the kings are exposed, but MVL is 2 steps ahead. Like a master kido, he's turned every blow into leverage. White grabs rxa8 as if pulling an emergency brake, but MVL doesn't flinch, playing beaks a8. The rook is gone, and now the dark bishop stands tall, like a warlord over smoking ruins. Morozevich plays h5, trying to awaken sleeping hopes on the king side. MVL coup rh8 saying, go ahead, take your shot, I'm ready. White centralized with re1, but the dream is flickering. MVL slices with bxc6, Sanjay clean, no panic, no mercy. The queen recaptures with qc6, clinging to center control. MVL, he doesn't back off to his bd4, like a shadow cast at sunset, long, ominous, and impossible to ignore. Morozevich activates the king with the move kd2, a risky move, but he has no choice. MVL finds a shot by playing qxb2. The queen raids the pantry, a quiet theft, but the consequence deafening. White throws a check with qc4, hoping to rattle the nerves. MVL steps away by playing kh, serene, unaffected, like an assassin slipping into the shadows. Morozevich repositions with kd3, his king crawling through rubble. MVL, he pushes his pawn to a5, a slow knife, not fast, but fatal. The queen lunges by playing qc8 check, another desperate blow, but MVL deflects with class by moving q3 check, a mere check, as if saying, is this the best you've got? The white's king runs to e4, but there's nowhere to hide. Black moves b3, pawn turns a monster. This is no longer just a pawn, it's prophecy, charging toward coronation. White answers with cxb3, eliminating the immediate threat. But MVL plays a4, one pawn falls, another rises like a hydra. The rook shifts to rb1, trying to anchor the chaos. MVL plants his queen on qb4, eyeing everything. There are no safe squares now, only illusions. White offers defense with qc4, a thin veil against a rain of arrows. MVL responds with qb7, a check. Yes, but really it's a dagger twisting in the ribs. Morozevich hopes to swap queens with qd5, but MVL doesn't blink, plays qb4, a repetition. No, a psychological grip. He's toying now. Another try by playing qc4, white trying to keep hope alive. MVL plays qd2. This isn't chess anymore, it's choreography. Every piece dancing exactly where it must. Finally, Morozevich deploys bg4, but it's like tossing water on a wildfire. MVL, he plays a3. That pawn, the one that started at a7, is now a titan, 2 steps from becoming a queen. White queen snaps into defense with qf7, covering fragile dreams. But MVL replies instantly qc2, check, cold, icy, like sleet against broken windows. Morozevich king trudges with kd5, a wonder without shelter. MVL plays qc5 check. The queen chases, never overextending, always circling like a hawk. White plays key e4, another move, but it's just motion now, not meaning. MVL plays a2. This isn't a pawn anymore, it's a promise. One square from royalty, one step from judgment. White tries to hot fate with rc1, a last thread of logic, but fate arrives anyway. a1q, new queen 2 now. MVL doesn't just win, he multiplies. Morozevich takes the fresh queen by playing rxc5, but MVL knows this story. MVL plays bxc5, a bishop returns to the board, a ghost with a mission, sweep the floor clean. White's queen clings to clarity by playing qd5, aiming for trades, hoping for mercy. But MVL plays qe1 check. There is no mercy, only precision, a blade, not a handshake. Morozevich king dances again, but it's a death spiral now. qd1 check. MVL's queen hunts with mathematical cruelty. Morozevich king slips, he plays kc4, but MVL closes in by giving check again with qd5. Queens are gone. Silence falls. But it's the silence after the storm. White recaptures with kd5, grasping at structure. MVL moves his bishop to ba3, not flashy but final. Every square it watches is a grave. Morozevich's bishop returns to the light. He moves bf5, one last breath. MVL calmly plays kg8. The king steps forward, not to escape, but to observe the checkmate unfold. No fireworks, no explosion, just a masterclass in pressure and inevitability. Morozevich grabs the hanging pawn with kxe5, but it's a mirage. rh8, MVL brings his rook to life, not a rook, a guillotine, quiet, waiting. White's king runs to d5, but the ropes are tightening. MVL plays nh7. The knight returns not to fight, but to seal, like a traitor who knows every escape route and locks them shut. Morozevich pushes gxa7 check, a pawn that tried to be a torch bearer. MVL calmly replies with kf7. Not panic, not flash, just inevitability, a general taking his throne behind layers of defense. White bishop swings by moving it to g6 to give a check, like a final punch from a bruised fighter. But black plays kf6, the king walks forward. Now he's not hiding, he's hunting. The hunter wears a crown. Morozevich tries f4, a scream in the void, but MVL, he moves his bishop to c1. He doesn't flinch, he goes for the kill. Now that bishop watches like a sniper from the roof. Another push, f5. Morozevich throws forward one last spark. MVL slides his bishop to d2. He doesn't dodge the flame. He snuffs it out. Clean. No ashes left. Morozevich moves his king to d6, but the noose has no slack. MVL's move b1 is clinical, no drama, just endgame poetry. Morozevich is still moving. He moves his king to d7 now, but the soul is wary. MVL shifts his aim by moving his bishop to b4. Every piece is a knife. Every square is a trapdoor. Morozevich tries to reroute his king with c7, but the king is no longer a king. He's a prisoner without a crown. MVL answers with ke5. He brings the king into the arena, royalty doing the cleanup himself. Morozevich brings back king to d7, one more square, but it's walking in place now. Bishop to a3 from MVL redraws the borders. That bishop, a silent executioner, pointed, precise, merciless. By now, the board doesn't look like a chess game anymore. It's a closing door, slowly creaking shut. Each piece left on the board has a roll. Each roll ends the same. Morozevich circles, plays kc6, but it's a dance without music. kd4, MVL mirrors Morozevich shadow to shadow. The king, now knighted, leads the final patrol. Morozevich back again, kc7, grasping at illusions. MVL plays kc3, he tightens the screws. This isn't positioning. This is dominion. He's not playing a game. He's closing a file. The white king begs, plays kd7 for squares that no longer belong to him. MVL doesn't just advance his king to b4, he looms. It's not check, it's presence. Suffocating, towering. White flees, saving his king, moves to d6 but leaves a scar behind. MVL rips the board clean. His king takes white's pawn on b3, another flame snuffed. Morozevich tries to draw lines again, plays kd5, but they only circle inward. MVL plays bb2 and the bishop returns. This time not to strike, but to watch, like a silent judge in a court with no defense. The white king stays hopeful, moves to d6, but MVL knows he plays his bishop to f6 is not just control, it's finality. A curtain being drawn, one file at a time. Morozevich veers again, plays kc5, searching for light through keyhole. kc3, MVL answers by standing in the doorway. You go nowhere now. White tries, moves kd6, his king spinning in a void. MVL follows kd4, chess's version of destiny. He doesn't chase, he guides, like gravity pulling a comet into silence. Morozevich still clings, moves his king to c6, but now the real axe falls rd8. The rook quiet all this time slides in like a silent assassin. And now every square breathes one word, checkmate is coming. Morozevich's last motion plays kb6, a whisper of protest, but MVL moves kd5. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. The board is his. The king has no subjects left, the crown dust. This is not just chess. This is how poise destroys panic, how preparation eclipses panic, how a grandmaster writes a slow, unflinching, perfect ending. The white king still breathes, barely. kc7 is not a move, it's a memory. But kc5 answers like thunder behind the mountain, steady, undeniable, final. The white bishop rises once more, moves to f7, an old soldier shouting defiance, but MVL he plays g5, a cold-blooded march. The pawn doesn't need backup, it is the instrument of prophecy. Morozevich reaches to fx g6, did end passant, not to fight but to scream. But Maxime doesn't flinch. He drops the hammer rd6. A rook on the 6 is no longer a rook. It's authority. White's pieces beg be8 for one final stand. b5 is not a reply by black. It's a monument. The bishop stands beside the king, not to shield him, but to witness the end. Morozevich plays kb7, stumbles to the last row of the theater. MVL's rb6 check to white king is the spotlight. A light so bright, it shows the cracks in everything. And finally, Morozevich moves his king to c8 like a leaf falling. MVL plays kd6, a soft close of the piano lid. The crowd isn't cheering. They're silent because something beautiful just died. This was not a game of chess. It was an execution in slow motion, a ballad written in bloodless ink. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave didn't just win. He orchestrated a masterpiece where every move was a note and every sacrifice a beat of the drum. Alexander Morozevich came to create chaos. But MVL, he built order so perfect it turned chaos into art. In this theater of logic and violence, Morozevich did not survive. He ascended. If you found this breakdown insightful, Please like the video, share it with fellow chess lovers, and subscribe to the channel.